Hello, and thank you for joining me. Summer is here, the sun is shining, ice cream season is here. And when you hear that special bell ringing, your inner kid starts looking out for that ice cream truck coming down the street. But what if I were to tell you that you didn't have to be dependent on the ice cream man to get your favorite summertime fix? Or maybe you might just be interested in some flavors that aren't on the menu at your local ice cream truck. And don't get me wrong, I love a Rocket Pop and a Choco Taco as much as the next guy, but sometimes I really love something a little different. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. We are taking a look at 3 ice cream flavors that I feel are highly underrated, and that you might enjoy trying for yourself. We will be making them all from scratch, 100% homemade. And I promise it's not that difficult and the results are well worth the effort. It will be best if you have some kind of ice cream machine, but no one is saying you can't do the trick with the bag of salted ice if you would rather. So, let's get to it. The 3 underrated ice cream flavors we are covering today: Rhubarb Swirl, True Butterscotch, and Honey Lavender. If I had to put these flavors in a loose category, I would call them flavors of European origin. Rhubarb and ice cream shows up in Scandinavia frequently, and I would bet it pops up in the UK also. Butterscotch is very much a flavor of English origin, and Honey Lavender is super French. In future ice cream videos, maybe we can visit some other regions, but for this video, Europe is our reference point. And speaking of reference points, I will be making a pint worth of each flavor, a little over half a liter. And now for the cooking. Let's start with the Rhubarb Swirl flavor. You will need some good rhubarb jam. You can actually find a video for how to make that in my channel. And you'll also need a mostly plain ice cream base. The process here is very straightforward. We will make the ice cream base, or custard, with just a tiny bit of vanilla. Then we incorporate our rhubarb jam or compote towards the end when we are spinning our ice cream. So for the ice cream custard base, I'm doing a very basic ratio of 1 part heavy cream to 1 part whole milk. So in my case, that's 1 cup of milk to 1 cup of cream. We get that in a pot, put it on the stove and bring it up to just a gentle simmer, and then we immediately kill the heat. This is called scalding the milk. And now we just set that to the side while we get to work on separating our 4 eggs. There are basically 2 schools of thought when it comes to separating egg yolks from egg whites: the finger method and the eggshell method. And as you can see, I'm firmly in the finger camp. We just get those 4 large egg yolks separated out, and then I put them in a mixing bowl, to which I add a half a cup of regular sugar, about 100 grams, and I just whisk those together until everything is nicely uniform. And then I take my pot of hot milk and cream and I begin to slowly start pouring it into my egg sugar mix while whisking quickly. Chefs call this incorporation process tempering. There is no need to be afraid, but it's important to take a little care here because if you add the hot liquid too quickly, you could scramble your eggs, and we don't want scrambled eggs. And once I have about half of the hot milk and cream mix incorporated into my yolks and sugar, I switch things up and then begin pouring the mix with the eggs back into the pot. The eggs are already tempered at this point, and we will be putting the mix back on the stove anyway, so this just saves a little bit of time. Make sure to scrape the bowl if there's any residual sugar at the bottom. Now that we've got everything mixed together in the pot, we get it on the stove and put the heat just a bit over medium and stir continuously using a spatula or a flat spoon. Now, some people use a double boiler, but I feel that this is unnecessary. As long as you keep stirring and watch the heat, there is no reason to fear. And because we worked quickly from the point of scalding the milk to incorporating it into our egg yolks, the liquid is still rather hot, so this won't take long at all. If you want to use your thermometer, we are looking for a temperature of around 80 Celsius or 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Just make sure you move the pot off the burner when you check the temperature, or your eggs might curdle because you stopped stirring. And if you want to use the old school method for determining if your custard is done, run your finger across a spatula or spoon. If the line holds to some extent, you are probably in business. And one last thing. While this custard is still hot, I just want to add a little spoon of vanilla sugar, but you could also use extract or a real bean if you were feeling fancy. But not too much, because this is a rhubarb-centered ice cream, not a vanilla-centered ice cream. Now we just need to cool our custard base before we can turn it into ice cream. Look at that. No double boiler, and yet no curdled eggs on the bottom of the pot. I usually leave my custard on the counter for just a little bit to cool slightly before putting it into a container in the fridge for a couple of hours. I don't know about your ice cream maker, but for mine it's really important that the custard base is cold, or else the ice cream will not set up nicely. So be patient. Once the custard has been cooled completely, I get my ice cream machine set up, then I switch it on and pour in my ice cream base. The sound of the ice cream machine is maybe not the nicest, but it means good things are coming. We just run that machine until the ice cream sets. It should look something like this. Then for the most important part, the rhubarb. I have my compote here, and I just want to drop in a few good spoons of that jam and let it swirl slightly into the ice cream. But not too much, or else the striation effect will be lost. That looks pretty great to me. Now we just quickly get that into a container and put it in the freezer until it is completely set. And that will probably take a couple of hours. But then we are ready to enjoy. Oh, this is such a great flavor. The tartness and juiciness of the rhubarb really shines through the creaminess. A beautiful summer flavor. But we have 2 more amazing flavors to get to, so let's keep moving. Next, let's talk butterscotch. And when I say butterscotch, I mean toasty, deeply caramelized butterscotch. Butterscotch candy is one thing. Butterscotch ice cream is a different, delightful beast. We start the process the same as before. I've got 1 cup of cream and 1 cup of milk, and I just bring it up to a simmer and kill the heat. Now for the butterscotch. In another pot, I give myself a half cup of brown sugar, slightly packed, maybe around 110 grams. And then I've got 2 good pads of butter, maybe call that 50 grams or so. Now we just get that pot on the stove and let it go over medium heat, stirring in the beginning just to make sure everything is evenly mixed. And now we just let time and heat do its thing. Most butterscotch recipes online just call for melting butter and brown sugar together. But this just won't do. This butterscotch has a wonderful depth of flavor from the almost burnt nature of the sugar. And indeed, you want to keep heating the sugar and butter mix until you have a deep, deep mahogany color and you see little wisps of smoke. Chef Jess used to say, "It has to burn your eyes." So feel free to write that down. Once we get the right color and smell, I just move it off the heat and let it sit for just a couple of minutes. We will soon incorporate our scalded milk, but I find that it is easier if you give the caramel the chance to cool just slightly. And once it's not so volatile, I just slowly drizzle in my scalded milk, and then I keep whisking for a bit because you will often get these solidified bits of sugar, but they will dissolve with just a bit of continuous stirring. Also at this point, I give it a nice pinch of flaky salt. The salt works really well with the flavor. I mean, it's essentially a salted caramel ice cream. And with our butterscotch cream made, we now need to take care of our eggs, which I already showed you how to do. This time is no different, only now we won't add any sugar to the yolks. So I just whisk them a bit in a pot because I need to cook the custard anyway and I didn't want to dirty a bowl. And then I drizzle in our hot butterscotch cream. Again, don't be afraid, just work with care. Once we do the do-si-do and all the butterscotch cream has been whisked in carefully, I now get the pot on the stove and heat it over medium plus, stirring continuously. And here again, the story is the same. Either follow your thermometer or the lines on the spatula. Now we get that out of the pot to cool, And look at the bottom of that pot again. No double boiler, no problem. And now we just patiently wait for that to cool. And once we get there, we set up the ice cream machine, turn it on, pour in the cooled butterscotch base, and let it roll until the ice cream sets up, looking something like this. Now, just transfer it to a container and store it in the freezer until it completely sets. And then, you are ready for something really special. Oh, look at that classic ice cream texture. And I don't know about you, but I really love that rust color. But most importantly, the taste is just fantastic. A depth of flavor from the darkness of the caramel that just flirts with being a little bitter, which keeps it from being overly sweet, by the way. And that salt just makes everything pop. Really good. And everyone loves ice cream in the summer, but I think this is also a great winter flavor. Highly recommended. Now moving on to our last flavor. This one is a little more light and delicate than the others. It's honey lavender. Now I'm willing to bet that most French people would not call this an underrated flavor, but for most other people, I think this one can be a bit under the radar. So, let's dive in. We are starting the same way as before, only this time I'm giving myself just slightly more milk than cream with my mix because I like to keep this one just slightly on the lighter side. And then we just put that on the heat, same as before, and take it off the heat just as it simmers. And now for the infusion of the lavender flavor. It's as easy as making a cup of tea. Get yourself some dried lavender. Maybe your grocery store has it, but if not, I'm willing to bet any specialty herb and spice store will have some. But just don't use lavender essential oil, because that won't be very nice. I just give myself a couple good teaspoons of my nice dried lavender, give it a stir, cover the pot, and let it steep for 10 to 15 minutes. After that time, while the milk and cream is still hot, I like to melt in my honey. I tend to prefer one that is on the lighter side, and I'm just giving myself a good glob. Let's call it a quarter cup or so, around 85 grams. Now give that a stir to dissolve. And then what do you think? Should I leave the lavender flowers in or strain them out? Well, sorry, this isn't live, so I already decided. I'm straining them out today, and being sure to press them well so we get all that flavor out. And with our lavender cream strained, we just set that to the side while we work on our eggs. And you already know the story here. For a pint of ice cream, I've got 4 eggs, which I separate out from the yolks. And then I mix those yolks with a quarter cup of sugar, about 50 grams, and whisk it together. And you might ask, why use sugar in a honey-flavored ice cream? And my reason is that honey actually has a pretty strong flavor. So using a mix of sugar and honey helps balance the flavor so both the lavender and the honey can shine. But of course, definitely feel free to play with the ratios and find a balance that is perfect for you. Continuing, the process is the same. We carefully mix in our warm lavender cream. Then we can put it on the stove over medium plus heat, stirring continuously. And I know I said before that both the thermometer and the finger test are fine for determining if the custard is done, but not all custards have the exact same consistency, so with a slightly thinner base like this one, you might find a thermometer more helpful. But either way, I have faith in you. And with our custard cooked, we now just need to let it cool off until it's cold enough to spin. Then we get out the trusty ice cream machine, pour the base in, and let her rip. By the way, I filmed this over the course of a few days, so I don't recommend trying to reuse your ice cream maker more than once in a day, unless you really space it out and give the canister enough time to get super cold again. Anyway, we just spin that until we hit the magic consistency, and then transfer it to a container for storage, and pop it in the freezer until it has set up completely. Then it's time to serve. In full disclosure, I didn't quite let this one set long enough, so it's ever so slightly on the soft side, which you can maybe see from the way I scoop it, but just barely. Still a nice scoop, but what could I do to increase the drama a little bit? Well, I once went to a lavender farm in France where they were distilling lavender brush into the essential oils over a live fire, and the intensity of that smell was incredible. So maybe as an ode to that memory, I can pull out my little smoking gun, get some lavender flowers in the hopper, and then trap a little lavender smoke under a bowl. Oh yeah, that smell takes me back. And of course the taste. As a lover of bitter things, I appreciate the slight medicinal flavor the lavender brings. Such a clean and, for lack of a better word, mature taste. And so there we have it, 3 ice cream flavors that I feel are highly underrated and underappreciated. Our juicy, creamy Rhubarb Swirl, our roasty, toasty Butterscotch, and our delicate and sophisticated Honey Lavender. I think it's time for me to enjoy my hard work. And thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this look at 3 rather different yet great flavors of ice cream and the process behind making them. I really hope you give them a try. I know ice cream is one of those things people think is too much trouble to make on your own, but I think you can see in the video that it's really quite simple, and I promise the results can beat anything from the grocery store. Plus, it's great to learn the technique behind making custard because you can use it in other applications beyond just ice cream. If you liked the video, there is a button just for you that you can click just below the player, and subscribe as well. I've got a nice collection of videos like this one and so many more ideas for future videos, so come along for the ride. And algorithm boost aside, please leave a comment because it's great to get feedback. What did you think about the list? What other flavors do you think don't get enough love? Maybe I'll end up cooking one of your suggestions. Only time will tell. And until next time, cheers!